Hi friends, welcome back to the Holistic Health Podcast. Kids immunity, fun topic.
people.
I love working with kids and speaking about this because gosh, when they're young, especially if they're in daycare or any kind of care, getting sick is just part of the deal, isn't it? And I think there's two approaches that we both take with this, and one is what can we do from a preventative perspective, and what can we do when a child actually does get sick. Now, this is not a comprehensive complete checklist of all of the different things or resources that you could possibly use, but just maybe a little starter, particularly knowing that at least in the Southern Hemisphere, we're moving slowly into a season that is going to be more sickness around, and it's good to start doing some of these things sooner rather than later, or at least have them on hand if you can. So for the purpose of this episode, we are speaking in the context of children 2 and up, just because there are some things that differ a little bit, not heaps, but a little bit with under 2. And not to say there aren't things you can do for under 2s, but just for simplicity's sake, we thought we'd just focus on that particular age group. So let's just jump in with some of the preventative strategies. So what can parents or caregivers or enthusiastic naturopath aunties do to help support from a preventative perspective?
I feel like if you're a mum listening to us, you're into natural health and you're probably doing most of these, if not all of these already, but everyone's on their own journey as far as health goes and supporting their children. So just for completeness, I'm going to run through them anyway. So sticking with a whole food based diet would be really important. It's key for all their macro and micronutrients. The immune system literally needs these nutrients in order to be able to function properly. And by the same token, by nourishing your child with an abundance of whole foods, you crowd out room for processed foods and refined sugar. Now, glucose disables the immune system. It is almost identical to vitamin C from a molecular point of view. Bit of just a quick nerd out for a moment. We actually used to manufacture vitamin C in our bodies from glucose, and then a little bit like when you haven't used an app on your phone for a long time and then you delete it because you're like, don't need that anymore. The same thing happened to us, and we deleted that gene, but unfortunately our white blood cells don't know that and continue to take up sugar, which then doesn't allow them to take up vitamin C and actually protect themselves. So I think it was something like it disables the immune system by up to 75% for 4 hours. And when I look at even adult diets like sugary cereals and, a muffin at morning tea and then chocolate in the afternoon, like people are walking around perpetually with a suppressed immune system. And when it comes to kids, of course, preferentially they're going to like sugar, and sugar is not great for them anyway, but especially during a season of sickness. Making sure they're getting enough sleep. I can't tell you how every parent that I've got to sort out the blue light, their light climate in the house, their kids have gone to sleep earlier with less fuss, slept deeper, woken up fresher, less moody the next day, better learning. So getting enough sleep, yes, but also not turning lights on at home that is going to stimulate cortisol and suppress melatonin, because that's going to be problematic for their immune system and also compromise their sleep quality too. And by the same token, even if you've got red blue blocking glasses for them, or maybe they're watching their favorite show on an iPad where you've got the screen red, just the stimulation from that, I wouldn't be using screens after sunset either. Now, I obviously say that sitting in my ivory tower without children. So if you're like, that's not going to happen, look, you don't have to get everything perfectly for this to make a difference. But honestly, if you can set up good habits, that's where I would start. And if you've got bad habits, I still would encourage you to work on shifting them. And then lastly, I would look at, in addition to making sure their diet is rich in whole foods, is making sure that their nutrient requirements are actually covered. And this might mean taking a food diary for a professional just to double check. It may be blood tests, but I know I'm not the biggest fan of recommending those for kids unless really absolutely necessary. But during the cooler months, vitamin D deficiency is absolutely a concern even for adults, but especially for us adults that are slapping our kids with sunscreen, that, their ability to actually access enough UVB to make enough vitamin D can be really compromised. And other particular nutrients for immunity like zinc. Zinc is the most common deficiency in children, and it's crucial for white blood cell activity, the health of the nose, lungs, throat, gut, skin. And so, if you've got the big bases covered, the smaller things would be checking those key nutrients as well, just to make sure that they've got everything that they need to actually function properly. And then I wouldn't be complete without saying making sure they get enough outdoor time and outdoor light. It doesn't have to be direct sunlight, but again, all of those really, I think we're going to come to call sunlight a nutrient at some point. I know that's starting to happen, but there are so many different elements to the wavelengths throughout the course of the day that switch genes off and on and program hormones off and on, and the timing of things. And we're living more and more indoor lives under artificial light and, artificial light from screens. I really think that's messing us all up. But because kids are so much more sensitive, the impact is seen on them first.
Yep, couldn't agree more. And speaking of outdoor time, I think also just outdoor time playing in dirt is really helpful for building their immune system. Again, as a preventative strategy, I'm not saying as soon as your kid's sick, chuck them outside.
Yeah, throw them in the garden.
I mean, you do you, but that's not what I'm saying. More so from a preventative perspective. And then I guess on the contrast to that, practicing good hand hygiene, not with like overkilling things, like just with general soap and water before they're eating or before or after they've gone to the bathroom, which I'm sure parents are already all over, but it's more so instilling that young. So it's still not always, doesn't always go down. I know that I have to, whenever I'm, looking after little people, I do have to watch them that they're not just like turning the tap on, turning it off and be like, yeah, I did it. I'm like, did you? The other thing I would also say that I use a lot in clinic as a preventative strategy is actually just getting them on a little bit of cod liver oil, because cod liver is a really nice balance of omega-3s, which can be important for the immune system, vitamin A, super important for the immune system, and also vitamin D. So it's a nice, what I call like little top up or insurance policy, and it can be something that is pretty accessible. So, some of the ones that I use in clinic would be like Nordic Naturals have a few children's ones, Metagenics, Bioceuticals, and I also think, there are other ones overseas that you can use as well, but there's just a couple of examples of ones you can look at that are good quality. And I think that's really important, that you're not just buying the cheapest one, that you can possibly find, but that you're looking for one that has third-party testing on it, and that is, you've got more of a guarantee on quality, because, you don't want to be having a poor quality cod liver oil or fish oil, because it'll create the opposite effect. The other thing I really like to do from a preventative perspective with little ones is to up the vitamin C in their diet, and if you can. So if they are kiddos that love like oranges or citrus fruit or berries, then great, like try and double down on that. If you're going through a bit of a challenging season with food and that variety or those kind of foods aren't something that they're going to particularly eat a lot of, another strategy that I do get parents to do, two things. One is you can make your own elderberry syrup for the winter, and I might find the recipe for one and put it into the show notes, because that can be a fun thing that is really rich in vitamin C. It tastes quite good and you don't need a large amount of it. So while, yes, there is some sugar in it because we're turning it into a syrup, the amount that you're having is not significant enough for that to be a problem, but you're still getting a little bit of extra vitamin C in it. And I guess it also, I think, gets them in the practice or in that mindset of, using nature and food for medicine for themselves. And I think what I've seen is, particularly when you're making it with them and they feel part of the process, they're less likely to refuse it. I think I've noticed that a lot even with cooking things. And of course, not always, like every kid is different. Sometimes it's just not going to fly, but it is something that can be a really helpful thing. There are also other whole food based supplements that are rich in antioxidants or vitamin C. So NutraOrganics is a brand that has a couple of options in their range for either vitamin C or like kids-based products that are rich in things like berries and antioxidants, or have camu camu, which is another vitamin C rich herb, without it being like a big therapeutic dose or a bigger therapeutic dose that we might use when someone's really acutely sick. It's another, again, little way that it can be, I guess, intertwined in their day-to-day or have them feel part of that process. And then I'd also say the last thing that I do often use as a preventative strategy, particularly in seasons of higher exposure, whether that's starting daycare or just being in daycare generally, whether it is going through a stressful time for them where there's an adjustment, whether it's like starting school or changing houses, or changing, like if you're doing a bigger move at where their immune system is going to be challenged a little bit, is just some probiotics. So, and looking out for the strain Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG is a really good thing to look out for. And that, again, is something that is very safe to be using as a preventative, and then you can always up it if they happen to get sick. But it's another way to provide a bit more robustness to their immune system. And again, you don't necessarily have to do every single one of these. You can just pick and choose whatever suits your children the best.
I love that. There are honestly so many great tools for kids, and I do love the homemade, handmade, getting them involved option. And also we live in a day and age now where supplement companies are really making things very palatable for children, not like my day where you just had to shove it down your throat and try not to throw it back up. So all right, well, if we're speaking about respiratory tract infections, I feel like these are the most common. It's one of the most common complaints as far as kids go. So the sniffles and the snots. A lot of what we've already mentioned is helpful. So zinc, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D. But a little bit like with adults, once you actually come down with something, there are other tools that you can introduce and layer on that can really make a big difference in how well you feel or how well your child feels as they're, just letting the infection run its course, but also impacting how long they might be sick or how frequently this occurs. So go-to tools that I love to recommend are N-acetylcysteine, or NAC for short, and watching their fluids. It might even be appropriate to add electrolytes, but kids can become dehydrated quite easily. Thirst signals get compromised when they're unwell. And then the less hydrated they are, the more sticky snot can be. Like their phlegm can be harder to clear from the sinuses and the lungs. And so by keeping their fluids up, you can help thin that mucus. And then NAC also actually helps to break mucus down and make it easier to expel.
And get flavoured NAC, because the unflavoured NAC is like, it's hard to get adults to take it, let alone kids, don't you reckon?
I always mix everything in vitamin C powder.
Yeah, that works. If you had something else you were mixing it in with, that's
but
fine.
On its own,
but don't try and give your child unflavoured NAC by itself. You will not. It will not work.
There'll be some serious trust issues.
I'd have some trust issues.
It's like a cross between like Rotorua and like Sour Nerds. It's like really sour. The acetyl group in it's very vinegary.
I think it tastes like what I imagine liquefying an egg fart would be. Oh, Jesus.
but also sour with vinegar in it. Yeah. Wow, that's very descriptive.
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot.
It sounds like you're traumatized.
And don't breathe on anyone after you've had it.
No, oh,
You'll
I've
never
had
be
that.
kissed again.
Yeah, and glutathione,
God,
same.
yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
want all my patients.
Yeah, you're a nice naturopath.
Yeah, I try to be.
Yeah, so NAC fluids, that can really help. And also, if you haven't invested in a nebulizer, can't recommend that enough. So as an adult, I like to do medicated steam inhalations, boiling water, some essential oils, towel over the head. It can be just really iffy for children, apart from the fact that in the dark with the steam, it's a bit much. Essential oils are very strong. It's also a burn risk. So a nebulizer, you can just use, purified room temperature water, add a drop of essential oil or two, and have a mask that's perfect for their face. And that's going to help, again, hydrate those mucous membranes that are inflamed, moisten up the mucus, and deliver anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial essential oils to the tissue in a way that's not overwhelming for them. What else would I do? Manuka honey is really good for a cough. Obviously, we're talking about kids over 2, and always mindful of allergies, but Manuka honey has really powerful antimicrobial properties, brilliant for a cough anyway. I actually treated my dog's kennel cough with wild cherry bark and Manuka honey, and she was great within 12 hours. Like, started in the middle of the night, and by the next day we didn't need to take her to the vet. So really powerful stuff, and I syringed it into her just like you would syringe it into your child's mouth. What else? Oh, and then good antimicrobials or immune stimulants, and my 2 favorites are lactoferrin and echinacea. Lactoferrin, I feel like, is fast becoming my hero. So lactoferrin is an antifungal, antiviral, antibacterial compound that our own white blood cells literally make to kill off pathogens in our body. One of the other things that I love about it is it doesn't knock out our own microbiome, which antibiotics do. So I'm such a fan of that. And of course, echinacea helps to speed up white blood cell activity. The only thing with echinacea is there's 2 things I'd probably be mindful of. Number 1, it comes from the daisy family. So if there's ragweed allergy in your family, primary relatives, or known echinacea allergy, might not be the right choice for them because it could trigger an allergic reaction. The other thing is good echinacea will make your mouth tingle and will stimulate your saliva glands. And that you need to explain to a child before you give it to them. Did I ever tell you what happened at my 21st?
No.
I don't know what I was thinking. I was clearly had a few too many drinks. Everyone came back to my house, and I thought it would be funny to give everyone echinacea shots.
Hilarious. That sounds like
hilarious for
the
me.
picture of a 21st.
Oh, so I don't know what got into me, but I had a clinic at home, had a full dispensary, and I was like, here, try this. And there were people in the garden drooling like Dobermans and spitting. And one person thought they were going into anaphylaxis because everything was tingling so
dear.
much. Anyway, no one who had it had a hangover the next day. So
There you go.
just saying. But it is very stimulating in the mouth. So again, for maybe children who are sensorially sensitive, perhaps stick with lactoferrin. And then the last thing I wanted to say is actually inclining their bed. Now, I'm a big fan of incline bed therapy. I think we got you and Bowen
You
onto
did.
that
Yep,
too.
our bed is on an incline.
Yeah. I mean, it's the only way to sleep. If you're not sleeping on an incline, what are you doing? But this is actually something they do in hospitals for elderly, people with compromised respiratory tracts, and children. If they have respiratory tract infections, is they'll elevate the head of the bed. Again, not something to do for babies. They don't have enough strength in their upper torso to support that could crush their airways. But 2 and above, just actually slightly elevating the head of their bed. Now, you've probably done this yourself, got an extra pillow so you're not sort of so congested lying flat. That's not great for your neck or your spine, especially if you're a side sleeper. But I know I stayed, I'm probably going to go to hell for this, but I stayed in a hotel once, and used like the Bibles to like prop up their head of the bed. And you know how like hotel rooms come with one? Like
yeah.
I was staying there with my boyfriend at the time and we called for a second Bible. They must have thought we were like praying ahead of time for our sins. And we just used it to like elevate the head of the bed because it's just actually easier to breathe anyway, but especially when you're congested, just allows like better drainage for the sinuses. And yeah, so they're all things that I do for the sniffles.
I love it. Well, I have nothing to add to that. There's all the same things that I would choose. I just think the last thing to round out the conversation would just be from the perspective of if it's not upper respiratory, but it's another common thing, aka gastro, then I would add to that electrolytes, which I know you kind of mentioned are maybe in the upper respiratory tract thing, but electrolytes would be really good. And then also SB for sure and for everybody because it can also act as a bit of a little preventative for everyone else in the family. And again, Lactobacillus rhamnosus can be another, which is a probiotic, can be another good thing to add in there. And again, there's much more that you could do than just that depending on the situation. But as far as things that you could have on hand in your home naturopathic dispensary or toolkit, I think if you've got some of these, or at least a handful of them, particularly some of the ones that might overlap across a couple of different common sicknesses that someone can get, it just makes the process so much easier. It makes you feel more empowered. It makes you feel like you're more resourced than only turning to things, that are medication related that I know, often for listeners of our podcast, they're trying to avoid or minimize that. It's really good to not just feel like you've got to go cold turkey, but you've actually got some other tools in your toolkit. So hopefully that helps. And of course, if you would love us to do more episodes on, children's immunity or other common kid-related things, then please reach out because it's an area of practice that is really fun to do actually because kids are such, they're young, they're such good responders to so much of what we can offer from a naturopathic perspective. And I think there's so much that you can do at home to support little ones with all sorts of different things.
You know what, I'd like to do an episode on how to get supplements into kids.
Oh, okay, yes.
I'm sure you've got quite the toolkit too, but I think maybe for parents that would be a good one.
Yeah, because it's often something that is a struggle and what works for one kid doesn't work for another, or what works on one day doesn't work for the toddler on the next day.
Toddler life. Yeah.
Yep. So 100% let's do that. Yeah. But otherwise, I hope that's been helpful and we'll be back in your ear holes again next week.
See you then, friends. Bye.